Hi, Shalom everyone over here. It's going to be Parashat Ki Tavo this Shabbat. So heard over an amazing, let's just say in-depth Torah some years back, so I wanted to share it with all you fantastic people out there as we're coming towards also Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur in the coming weeks over here. We're in the middle of the Hebrew month of Elul. What a nice place to share it just in a pizza restaurant over. I like to go and be adventurous with each Parashat Shabbat message. So over here, just grappling in and enjoying the Eretz Israel and sharing some Torah in Eretz Israel. And you know what a time here, because we're talking all about fruits and foods in this week's parasha. It happens to be a parasha of Bikurim. Parashat Ki Tavo happens to be respectively. Now, taking this from an old friend of mine, it gave a very, very in-depth class, Dvar Torah, about this some years back. He introduces it. He actually titles it "Appreciating Our Fruitful History," Parashat Ki Tavo. Now, this week, we obviously, naturally being Parashat Ki Tavo, it gives over more, let's say, preparatory mitzvot to the nation who are, let's say, on the verge at this stage of time of entering the land of Israel. Among these mitzvot are those, something called Bikurim, the first fruits over here, which was, let's just say, not just bringing the first fruits, it was also the very interesting commandment for the elders, let's just say, of the people to inscribe the entire Torah onto 12 huge tablets of stones, let's just say, which were to be placed on various mountains, including Mount Ebal, and also along with Mount Gerizim, which was spoken. And then that was, let's say, so Mount Ebal together with Mount Gerizim was then the scene for the famous declarations of the brachot and the klalot, the blessings and the curses, which obviously will make up a majority chunk of the parashiot. At the end, remember, in a lot of the Beit Knesset synagogues, when the Shliach, the Chazan himself, the Baal Koreh, will actually read the curse, he'll do a more quicker and lower tone at that point in time, because we don't want any curses, we just want brachot, blessings in our life. And that was the scene, let's just say, Mount Ebal, Mount Gerizim in of itself, with these blessings and curses, which would make up obviously the majority of the Torah. Also, it's rich in prophecy and detail on the future of the Jewish people, which much of it was seen out, mapped out in Jewish history as time goes on. Now, Parashat Ki Tavo then conclude, obviously, at the end with the beginning of Moshe Rabbeinu's, let's say, final charge to the people, which will obviously take up the remainder of that portion in of itself. Now, the great Moroccan commentator, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, from the great rabbis of his time, Rabbi Ben Attar, who we've mentioned about before on this channel before, he's a biblical commentator in of itself. He lived during the 1700s. Respectively, a very, very key time in Jewish history. So according to Or HaChaim, the opening line of Parashat Ki Tavo contains no less than 4 positive mitzvot, commandments. We are told to enter and accept the land of Israel as part of our land, to conquer it, though through the defeat of the Canaanite nations in battle. Obviously, we're going to see progressing at the time of the book of Joshua within regards to this. We'll also state over the Or HaChaim to dwell in it, and finally to then bring these first fruits, these Bikurim, these first fruits respectively. Now, the great rabbis, they derive from this opening verse that this commandment to bring the first fruits only applies to the Shivat HaMinim, the 7 species, which Israel is praised for, naturally being wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. Obviously, we celebrate Tu B'Shvat on the 15th of Shvat with this, for which the land obviously is praised for. Now, the great Or HaChaim also points out that the opening word of the Sedra, Vaya, implies simcha, or joy, let's just say. And therefore, the bringing of these Bikurim was a time of much joy, happiness, which had to be, like, obviously, to be between, let's just say, in of itself, Shavuot and Sukkot, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Shavuot, Pesach, and Sukkot. This implication of Simcha is also seen in a later verse, which says, "You shall rejoice with all the goodness that Hashem has given you," which are featured in chapter 26. So what did this process at the beginning of the first fruits involve, let's just say, in of itself? What was it possessing? We are taught that I think 1/60th of the produce of these species is brought as Bikurim, the first fruits, with the Torah specifically stating, "You shall place it in a basket." If we take the word used by the Torah here for basket, which is what the author Daniel Sangram actually says, tena, we can see that the 1/60th amount is alluded to in the gematria of this word, which happens to be 60. Obviously, an aleph is 1, a nun is 50, and a tet is 9. The person bringing the first fruits is then told to go to the Kohen, the priest, and say, "I declare to Hashem, your God, that I've come to the land that Hashem swore to our forefathers to give us." With close analysis over here, the author says there seems to be a distinct problem, let's just say, in himself with this declaration over here. That's what's actually stated out. Why? However, where the where is the actual declaration over here? When reading back to, like, say, this apparent declaration at that point in time, it's this. Let's say it doesn't necessarily seem to be one present, rather a statement that the person has come to the land of Israel. According to the great Mefarshim, the great rabbis, that is exactly the point. The person saying these words has just arrived in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim Shel Zahab, at that point in time. And after what could have been a long and treacherous journey, let's just say, he has his first fruits in his hands, and he goes up to the Kohen, to the priest. I declare to Hashem today, he's going to state over, your God. At that point in time, sorry, there's just a bit of wind where I'm actually sitting in the position I'm sitting in. I'll just say again, I declare today to Hashem, your God, that I have come to the land that Hashem swore to our forefathers that Avot to give us. By just being there, he's making quite the declaration of both appreciation for Hashem and his avodat Hashem, with the great lengths he's willing to go to in order to serve him. Also, there's important lessons learned over here from this, that in life there's no better way to declare oneself than to act, to do maaseh itself. As there's a famous phrase going, put your money where your mouth is. It is very easy for people to talk, but not always as simple when it comes to acting on it. And it's interesting, the author over here would have heard many of the, let's say, yeshiva students at his time declare how maybe a religious person might be, and how he feels spiritual and thinks about God the whole time. But these students are usually ones that might be, the author says, maybe having a problem sleeping in sometimes, and so on and so forth. You know, they have these issues, and not necessarily being too meticulous in certain workings when it comes to Avodat Hashem. So he actually states, the ones who are really making a declaration are those who get up early and spend most of their day inside the study hall, the Beit Midrash. And just say there is no verbal declarations necessary for these, let's say, students in of itself. Now it's interesting, the final stage of bringing the first fruits is the main part and the reading out of the Thanksgiving Parsha to Hashem, to God, which I think the Sifrei highlights to be the passage that forms a major part of the Pesach, the Passover liturgy, obviously on the 15th of Nisan. This recital includes a brief sketch of Jewish history, with the effect of which is to show that the land could never have been given to the Jewish people without God's loving intervention throughout history. The first place of history, which is recited obviously, and Aramean tried to destroy my forefather, we see in chapter 26 verse 5, which of course, with obviously Rashi's commentary, the conniving Lavan who tried to deceive Jacob in terrible ways and eventually pursued him with the intention of killing him, as we see towards the latter part of Sefer Bereshit. This is Hashem then revealed himself in a dream to Lavan, there to prevent obviously this from happening. So let's say, what's the relevance of this opening piece of information which is to be started in this recital? The question the author asks over here is, why not start with Abraham, or even the first man, Adam Harishon? Every Pesach we read the famous statement, in every generation they rise against us to annihilate us. What we see by Jacob was the first Jewish congregation with himself and his family, all God-fearing over here, people. With what happens, as you say, with the first ever generation of Jews then? Now someone tries to rise up against us and destroy us. We see that all throughout Jewish history, that obviously being Lavan in that case. We also see that Hashem was there to miraculously prevent such a happening through his revelation of warning to Lavan. We therefore see with this opening line of the statement that right from the start we are thanking Hashem for the survival of the Jewish people with our existence and a constant threat throughout history since the first generation of Jews. Now I'm actually recording this at a time period where last couple of months we've seen everything going on with Iran, with the Houthis, just a rocket yesterday from the Houthis yesterday, and all the miracles that Hashem has performed for Am Yisrael recently. Therefore, we see with this opening line the statement that right from the start, we thank Hashem for the survival of the Jewish people with our existence at a constant threat. The recital over Bikurim, the first fruits, let's just say, it then goes on to describe how Jacob and the first generation went down to Egypt with the Torah, let's just say, using the language of out a few in number, let's just say. It's brought down by the famous genius of Vilna Gaon, that the word me'ut, few, has in itself allusions to our history. Obviously, we go all the way back to Parashat Shemot. We, let's say, see that it was 70 who originally went down to Egypt. And if we also think back to the commentaries from that Parashat Shemot and the Pesach liturgies, we see also, remember that before we were taken out of Egypt, the Jewish nation had slumped to the 49th level of impurity, one short of being fully assimilated both physically and spiritually. into Egyptian society at that point in time. Now this word, the word few, the me'at, we see that the middle letter is an ayin, which obviously has a gematria of 70, implying the 70 went down to Egypt originally. We also see the other two letters on either side of the ayin. It's a mem, which obviously is 40, and a tet, which is a 9, which obviously comes to the 49th level of impurity, which the nation would fall in Egypt, which we have to also point out. We must also ask, this question the authors ask, what is the link between bringing the first fruits and that of reciting a brief outline of a history over here, a history lesson? Hidden amongst this order is a valuable lesson for not just us with regards to our appreciation of Hashem, God. We must learn from here that whether it be the produce of the earth or actual cells, we must always remember where it all came from. If we study the miracles of how fruits is actually grown for no more than, let's say, it was dirt, you had needed sunlight, and explore the wonders of the human body, we can see that Hashem bestows miracles upon us on a daily basis. This obviously links nicely, the author says, to the miracle that is the Jewish nation's survival throughout history, which can only be explained through Hashem's helping hand. We must always remember to appreciate Hashem for all that He does for us and recognize His influence around us. Now the first fruits of Bikurim and the short recital was just that. Although the author says, we are unfortunately unable to bring the Bikurim in obviously our time period here, because we don't have the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, we are able to show appreciation to Hashem using other channels, avenues. Obviously, in the section immediately following the Bikurim and other tithes to be given from one's produce, we are told, this day Hashem your God commands you to perform these decrees and the statutes. Rashi also commentates over there on the verse, stating that the reason the Torah uses the Lashon, the language of Hayom, this day, is because the Torah is trying to teach us an important lesson, and that is each day we must perform the mitzvot of the Torah, and if they were commanded to us anew, this means that we should endeavor to have excitement every time we perform a mitzvah as if it's a fresh commandment. Now this same language, let's just say in of itself, is found in the first paragraph of the Shema, the prayer, obviously, with its using words that I command you today. We therefore learn that although the Torah was given thousands of years ago, we are not to regard the commandments as an ancient ritual that we follow out of loyalty and habit. We should regard them with the same freshness and enthusiasm as if God had given us on this very day, which is obviously a phenomenon. Now, I've heard this in-depth Devar Torah many years ago from Daniel Sandground, who learned at Yeshiva Torah Academy called Orsameach Yeshiva, and I took it actually from, there's an excellent website out there, shortvort website.com, which has many short inspirational Shabbat Devar Torahs, Shabbat weekly inspirations over here. So on that note, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for watching, and watch over all the previous videos we've done on the Parashat and all the other videos we're doing on this channel, as we have loads of content.